Scott Hebert, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
But are you like are do you it's bless you for saying thanks for having me you here, but like I am so sorry for that which we are about or what we have just done.
Yeah, I feel like I got punked.
So when was the last time you had seen Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
I actually bought it on Blu-ray.
Wow.
Yeah, back in the olden days, we upgraded and got a HD TV, and I had a PlayStation, and I could get Blu-rays, and so I bought it, and then I was like, oh, okay, and so I had it. So I probably watched it. I want to say like three times or something before this. Um, Back in the old days when you used to watch the same DVDs over and over and over, right? But definitely not since then.
I was trying to think through. I think I've seen this once more than when it first came out. I remember a family friend bought it on DVD. We watched it at their place, and I remember enjoying it, but I was also like an idiot. I was trying to do the math. I'm like, okay, 2008. I was an idiot teenager who was like 13.
Yeah,
My taste had yet to develop.
yeah, yeah. You're just a little kid.
Yeah, I mean, okay, for credit, this movie is entertaining if you have just want to see random stuff on screen.
That is true. Random stuff does keep happening.
So did you like it the first time? What was your first reaction when you first watched it?
Not stoked. Basically, I had already let it. It had, from what I remembered, it had already come out, and everybody was like, "It's aliens," and I was like, "Okay." Like that was gonna be like it was like the Indiana Jones with aliens, pretty much, and I was like, "Okay." I'm like that by itself is not to me Indiana Jones, but it
Yeah.
also doesn't wreck it for me.
Hmm.
I think they could have done aliens in a good way.
I agree.
Uh, but then yeah, so I watched it going in with that, and I was just like, oh no, this is just like not great though, right?
Hmm.
Like the other ones I remember being such the other ones were such show pieces of my childhood,
Hmm.
showcases.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like it's pillars of my childhood. Like um to come back to this, I was just like, yeah, nothing. Didn't not great. Not great.
So this film, I here's one of the first things that I thought of as I was watching this movie. I'm curious, like, what the Venn diagram of crossover is between, okay, like kind of spiritual, supernatural relics and paranormal aliens. Like, those are two different categories of things.
Um
One fits better with archaeology than the other.
yes, that is in fact true. Um Definitely. I don't think I think there's a way to make that work though. I don't think it's
Mhm.
too far. I think that if you're asking us to believe in crusading ghosts and
Yeah,
the powers coming out of the ark, I don't think in that universe.
that's too far to
Uh,
ask about the aliens.
yes, but I think that it accompanying on a shitty story
Hmm.
that was a mess. Um I think one of the things that I wrote down was that it was like it was trying I feel like it was trying to trade on nostalgia too much. Like it was
Yes.
trying to be this big nostalgia trip.
Well,
Um
okay. So every time I, when he, I think that from the moment where he does the first hat grab,
yeah.
we should know we're kind of in trouble because the hat means nothing as far as like the actual context of the universe, other than it's his hat. But
Yeah.
to us as the audience, being able to see that, it's like, oh, wow, which is cool the first time. But they do like three more of those. And that's when you just realize, oh, they're really trying to just like tug on, oh, you know what this means.
Yeah. Oh, remember?
Member
Remember?
berries.
Yeah. Yeah, like even yeah, it's just too it's too it's too in your face about it. Like they're in that warehouse and the box opens up and you get a perfect shot of the ark. It's like, oh, just give me a Easter egg where like the numbers printed on the thing in the background, and somebody has to tell me that at 3:43, go back and look at this the box, and you can see it burn through the thing or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, give me something like
Mhm.
that. I don't need to see the fucking arc.
Well,
Sorry.
here's the issue I always have with
Yeah,
this film in particular, to do it a couple of times. Never tease me a more interesting movie than the one you're giving me.
yeah,
Like, it's more narrative symmetry to say, oh, the Russians now are like invading here to get the Ark. And then Indy, of course, is the one that has to try tracking it down because he's the only one that has found it before.
yeah,
Or this is the big one. When he's sitting there and he's like, Mac can't be a double agent. He was an MI6 when I was in the OSS. We did dozens of missions together, which is more of the expositional slop that they do throughout this movie. That is an inherently more interesting premise. Indiana Jones in the OSS during World War II
yeah,
than anything in this movie.
yeah. I I um I was watching stuff on YouTube about it before, and they were talking about like that when the guys wanted to make it, that they were thinking back to like the 1940s B movies,
Mm-hmm.
alien stuff, because that was, well, it kind of tags on to actually your whole series that you've been doing, but it was like that was part of
Yeah.
basically the inspiration for Indiana Jones was a bunch of old movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what they did wrong was think that that formula that gave them the Indiana Jones of watching the old movies was going to, it took though they kept on going with that instead of taking an established character that we already love and
Mm-hmm.
building it off of that, because there's like a lot of like, even there's a part where probably the greatest character in cinema, Mutt Williams, yeah, gets to do a bit of a, gets a bit of a tussle, and there's like this like greasers versus
Mm-hmm.
the Socs, you know what I mean? It's like a little tussle in the diner, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like you're just ripping stuff off, like,
Well, it's
which is all not bad, but it's just like, yeah, I was just like,
poorly done.
yeah, it's too on the nose, right?
Well, so there are a couple of issues with this. First and foremost, so I think the setting, 1950s Indiana Jones, I think works. Like the more I watch this, having now gone through all of these pre-movies, all the movies that inspired, and all of these, like even reading pulp stuff from the time. Like
Yeah,
again, I actually do think you're right. Aliens can work with a good story. There's a
yeah,
lot of things where I was like, oh, you plucked that idea and you thought it was good, and you're right, that was a good idea. Problem is you didn't deliver on it
yes.
to make us want to watch it. So like I was like, okay, my one of my big questions was Shia LaBeouf going to be as annoying as I remembered? And I actually don't think that he's terrible. It's just he's Shia LaBeouf against Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford remains like, as much as this movie's crappy, Harrison Ford still has it. Like far more than I expected. Where just the charisma, the charm, he's still chewing scenery as himself. And then there's Shia LaBeouf, who is just kind of there. But
I
like
don't
the
think it
whole
was.
idea of him being a greaser is pretty good, like in the 1950s.
Yeah, I don't mind that particular part um, of him being a greaser. I was just more thinking that it just fell flat, like the whole fight
Mhm.
thing. I was just like, oh, this is just so stereotypical. Like, I feel like I'm watching like a Back to the Future type thing where they're like back
Well,
in time, you know, which is good,
and
but
that's
yeah,
when Lucas grew up.
yeah,
Like I don't think that helps. Is like the previous movies, we're talking about a time period that none of the directors have nostalgia for.
yes,
Whereas once we're in the 1950s, you have George Lucas and Steven Spielberg going, I remember what it was like to go to the sock hop.
yeah, exactly. I also I think that Shia LaBeouf um did what he could with
What he
what he
had.
got. Yeah, I don't think that his, I think his performance was actually good. And if somebody, I could see somebody else being in that position and making it even worse. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think that he, I don't think, I think he did a decent job. I think that if he had a good script, I think he could have been done
Mhm.
a very good job. But I just don't think that, I don't think that the script and the story serviced him at all. I
No.
didn't care. Like, you meet him, he's on, he rolls up on the motorbike beside the thing, beside the train, and he's like, "Oh, are you are you Indiana Jones? I need to talk to you." And then all of a sudden they're like, he gets off the train somehow, even though it's
Mhm.
moving. Like, you know what I mean? It's just the whole thing is like just weird. But
So I have
yeah,
to,
I just don't care about him as a character
yeah,
though. That didn't make me care about him at all.
no, there. So we just did a conversation with Matt Bird, who wrote a book called The Secrets of Story and the Secrets of Character. His premise is you have to create to for us to follow a character. We don't care about story, we care about characters. For us to care about the characters, you have to make us believe, care, and invest. They try to do that with Mutt, but it doesn't really work. We don't really care is the thing. Like there's the human element of him is he doesn't want to go to school because like his mom does, she wants him to go to school, but he doesn't. You're like, is this supposed to be like the Avatar we're supposed to be interested in? I don't see it. The other thing I want to bring up is this movie does something I find very irritating, which is it tries doing two threads to pull Indiana Jones into the story. So we open with the whole him getting thrown into the Area 51. So that pulls him into the story, which we will talk about that scene in just a moment. But then Mutt shows up with the letter that, oh yeah, he was interested in these crystal skull things back with his college buddy way back in the day. You have taken two entirely non-associated things because the reason he was at the Area 51 thing was because apparently like he had been brought in to examine the corpse of the alien thing
At Roswell.
at Roswell. So why did we need to we already had something to draw him into the story. Why did we need to throw a second one that we're supposed to believe happens? It messes up the story more.
Well,
It's
yeah, we
not
need to
as
get,
linear.
but we needed to get to the point where Marion's gets revealed, right? We need to get to that point. Like that's why, like if as you were talking here, I was just thinking like if we had gotten the first part of the story through the eyes of Mutt,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And we seen him with Marion at first, then we would be invested in his character. And then when he went to go find Henry Jones, we would have already been invested because we know that this is Marion's son,
Mm-hmm.
right? And Henry doesn't know yet, but we know that it is. And so it would make us like care more just by virtue of that particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like that they're just it felt like that they brought him into the story, obviously, to be like, oh, this is your son, right? Um, but they still don't make me care about him at all.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that the second point was to bring the other guys into the story, but I know I see what you're saying. Yeah, there's two threads pulling him in from the good angle and the bad angle, and it's like, okay.
We only needed one. Like if you watch any of the other movies, there's only one reason he goes and does the adventure.
Yeah. Actually, you could have, that's true. Now that you're saying that, you could have cut the entire first part out with the Russians altogether.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's talk about the first part of the Russians. The
Can we talk
moment
about the first? Can we talk about the very opening scene first
Yes,
off?
yes, that's what I mean. Let's talk about that to the Roswell bit because
Okay.
uh I will say this. I was glad to see the old like lettering for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and the title sequence. Like that made me happy. But then once I actually paid attention to what was going on screen, I was very unhappy.
Yeah, it's 2 minutes of nothing.
It is the Russians who are pretending to be Americans racing a jalopy of teenagers with Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog playing that has nothing to do with this movie.
Yeah, it literally brings zero value. The CGI prairie dogs look pretty silly.
We get three
Um,
scenes with CGI prairie dogs.
yeah, I noticed that too.
Three. Some animator had to sit there and render CGI prairie dogs, not once, not twice, but three times.
I know. I thought about that too. But the thing with the so I downloaded it and watched it, and I was sitting on my couch, and then I was texting you after the movie ended, and then it started playing again because it was just on. I just had the player on loop or whatever, and so I watched the first opening sequence again,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started watching it, and I was like, oh, maybe this is to establish that what time period we're in
Mm-hmm.
because Elvis is playing. Um, they're riding around in the jalopy. I'm just like, oh, that's why this is four, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like clicking it and it's making sense to me. And then they get to the army base and then it says like Roswell 1952. And I was like, well, if you're gonna fucking tell me, why did you just show me? Like you
Yes.
can I told you that whole first scene could have been 2 shots, 3 shots,
Mm-hmm.
4 shots if you wanted it to be max, whatever. But I was just like, this is trash. Especially for the first opening scene of Raiders being such a good scene,
Mm-hmm.
or the Temple of Doom
Mm-hmm.
in the restaurant, like it's fun.
Club Obi-Wan is still one of the best. This film, if you look up on IMDb trivia, this is the only movie that does not have, quote, a mini mission Bond style intro before getting to the main story.
Yeah. Like what if they showed the Roswell crash as the first scene?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the reason why they have to the reason why they have to have the opening scene is because they have to get to the point with India and the nuke.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a part that a lot of people don't like, but that's what the whole thing is that like the the aliens have this incredible power that they're like not kind of ready to give humanity yet because we're already we're bad guys.
We've become Death, the Destroyer of Worlds,
Yeah.
which
Right.
they quote in the movie because they have on the nose dialogue. And there is, I will give it this, the imagery of Indiana Jones standing there at the mushroom cloud. I was like,
Yeah.
that is a good shot. Like that is
Oh
a
yeah.
good concept art scene.
Yes.
I just give it to me better. The whole bit, so him getting dragged out of the trunk of the car too, great way to start a story. Like honestly, I think that is not a bad setup. It's just let's cut to that like right away. But then also the whole thing in the warehouse, it just felt belabored.
Yeah, it's silly. The
And the Russians don't feel like they're actual soldiers because they're like following people. They're not like maintaining
yeah,
military order. Like the Nazis in the movies, even though they're like comic book Nazis,
they're Nazis.
they're still acting like soldiers though.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure that in the first scene, like I was listening to it again. Like I said, I watched the first 5 minutes again, but I'm pretty sure Kate Blanchett's like she has like a really good like Eastern Ukrainian
Yes.
Russian accent sometimes, and then
And then it vanishes.
a couple times I'm like, oh no, I think you just like stopped. I think she says
Mm-hmm.
no, like KNOW a couple of times, and I'm like, no, not doing
So
it
like
for me.
even the premise of Kate Blanchett as a villain, like I actually was like, okay, Russian lady badass with a rapier. That is a B movie idea that can work as a villain if you do more with it.
Yeah,
But it's like
specializing
taking
in
the idea and
psychic.
dropping it and leaving it there.
But yeah, and specializing in psychic powers. Yeah, I guess she doesn't really do anything with. Oh no, she did. She battles him on the car.
Okay. So let's talk about the car scene
Well,
because
no, let's stay on the beginning for a second. We'll get
okay.
to there because there's a lot about that jungle shit that pisses me off.
Okay, also I do
Um,
need to say the hat again, when he sits down, picks up the hat, and they put it on the head and we just see the silhouette, I was like, okay, that is nostalgia bait I will give because the idea of the silhouette of Indiana Jones
yes,
has been something that works. Like, remember, I sent you the meme, I think, of like it's the silhouette in the bar,
yes,
and
yeah,
it's the guy from
yeah,
Community underneath it going, "Oh my goodness, silhouette, this is Shadow."
yeah. No, the thing that I wanted to say, the last thing I want to say about the opening scene thing was like that.
It's just mirrors the lighting
So
off too.
the what?
The lighting looks off when you see like shots from one end to the other of like the Russians facing the Americans and the Americans facing the Russians at the beginning. The
Mhm.
lighting looks like it's wrong, like the background versus the actual like lit.
Oh, crazy. But the thing I didn't really notice that. I was gonna say I'll check it over. I don't think I'm watching it again. Um, No, the thing that made me angry was the the thing was magnetized and they're like throwing gunpowder and shit up. And then but
Because you
then you
can
can
see
also
gunpowder fly.
it's well, you might be able to, whatever. That part didn't bother me. But this thing is has such a strong magnetic pull that you can throw gunpowder up and small little pieces are gonna track over there or whatever. And you can just something gets stuck to it, and then you can just pull it right back off afterwards. Like that's not how a magnet works like that.
Hmm.
If it was strong enough to making their guns and stuff and like rolling stuff,
Yeah.
uh there would be no way that they could like unget that crowbar off of those things. You know what I mean? Like it was just
Hmm.
like it was either it was both very, very strong magnetized and also very, very weak magnetized. And I was just like, this is just fucking
That's not how
silly.
science
Like,
works.
yeah, her like sword gets stuck to it, and then she just like takes it off. Like they slide it into a metal truck, right? The whole box, and it like doesn't do any like you know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's like I was just like, this is fucking silly. Like, why didn't
Okay.
everything? Why hasn't everything else been attracted to it? Why if there was if you could throw up those little metal balls, there would and that thing's been in there for 20 years or whatever. When was Roswell? I don't even know when Roswell was. But
Well, okay, here's another thing I just want to check with you. Do you remember, does the actual skeleton do anything? Like the remains that they steal, it
no,
literally, like, we get a scene of it being like uncovered,
no,
and that's it. Like, it
yeah,
doesn't do anything to actually move the plot. The
no.
MacGuffin should, if they're doing all this stuff to get it, there has to be a payoff. Like, it's all set up with zero payoff for that.
Yeah, it's just the things that we need to take out of that are like Russians bad, Max working for the
Okay,
bad guys,
I will
right? And
give
then
the Mac
Indy's got to see the
betrayal
new.
works. Like the dialogue for that is very cheesy. It's very pulpy. I can see like that being in one of the OG movies.
Oh yeah, I know. I have no problem. There's a lot of the things in this movie that I don't have a problem with inherently.
Hmm.
Um, but
It's
just
the
all
execution.
together. Oh yeah, the execution is horrible. Like altogether, it just sucks. Like the double agent thing, good. Kate Blanchett is an angry Russian who's obsessed
Hmm.
with psychic power things. Cool, right?
Hmm.
And she's got the sword. Cool. They want to have a sword fight in there. I'm in. You want to swing on some vines? I'm also okay with that. We'll get to that in a minute. But like car
Okay.
chase scenes, cool. Like you know what I mean. But
Hmm.
altogether, it just is like, and
Slop.
I think you're very right about how I didn't even think about that, but we could have skipped a lot of the fucking beginning.
I do like I because I do want to like occasionally say that there was something good in this movie. Any last words, Dr. Joan? His reply, I like Ike. I I was like, oh, the magic, it's there, and then it's quickly gone.
Yeah, I didn't get it at first. I was like, I don't get it. And then I was like,
Oh, you
oh,
Canadian.
American politics. Because I seen it written on the bomb. And then I was like, oh, and I think I seen a trailer for Oppenheimer. And I was like, oh, this makes sense.
I'm excited for Oppenheimer though. Like
Oh yeah,
of
I want to see it in big IMAX.
oh, well, it's Chris Nolan, Cillian Murphy. It's like got the who's who of Hollywood. And it looks like it's gonna be amazing. This is Cillian Murphy coming off of Peaky Blinders too. Okay, so second, I did also like him fighting the big Russian. My only complaint was he doesn't get like hurt in that fight, despite the fact they're like throwing each other on chains.
Well, that's kind of what I was talking about in the last time we did the Raiders one, is that I couldn't like I didn't when I was a kid, I thought it was a lot more realistic, the Indiana Jones movies, and then I realize now how silly it is. And I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
silly aspect that Indiana Jones can't really get too hurt until Marion's tending his wounds in the boat, right? But other than that, we don't see him being hurt, and that's just part of the
Mm-hmm.
campy, like that's just is what it is, you know what I mean? So that part doesn't really bother me so much because of my reflections from the other movie. But yeah, that's a good scene. And then Glenn the rocket car thing and
And then I made the notes about all the gophers, all the bloody
yeah.
gophers.
And then so a nuke go like yeah, the prairie dogs, whatever, go for same thing, I guess. But like they're prey creatures, right? So they live in colonies so that they're not getting eaten all the time. They go to the hole, and then if anything is around, it alerts them, and then they all yell, and then they go back in the ground. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so a nuke goes off, a fridge, a fridge explodes and lands like right beside them, right? So the ground would be shaking, And then Indiana Jones gets out, and that prairie dog is standing outside of the hole at full alert. And I was just like, it should be in the ground. There's just no reason for it. There's zero. I actually did like the shot of them watching the rocket car. I thought that was funny, but still, I'm just like, why is this like no reason?
And then of course we get the I didn't mind the exposition scene where we start having the we're getting plot dumped on us. Like by then we've had a couple of action scenes, so having exposition, fine. The problem is again, it feels like there's lots of talking in this movie more than like we talked about in Raiders, the economy with every word that's said.
Yeah.
This film just talks.
Yeah, it's because they don't show anything to make us like care about the characters or whatever. So they have to tell us, this is your son. Don't let us
Oh,
figure it out.
okay. Can I
Whatever.
just complain about that real quick?
Yeah.
The so the concept here was we have them trapped. Okay, these are the worst Russian soldiers on earth because they allow the entire group of people that they have captured to be in one clump away from the soldiers so that Mutt can kick over the table and go, come on, let's run, grab Indy. And they run into the jungle with no one
Yeah.
there to stop them.
Yeah.
And then they fall in quicksand. Again, the quicksand idea, not a bad idea. The fact that Jones is starting to talk about how, well, it's technically not quicksand, it's actually dry sand. Stop lecturing, Professor. That was actually funny back and forth.
That was
But the
good.
problem is, we have just like been told that we're like given the impression we don't know how far away they got. The Russians are like just around the corner. And then they tell Oxley, who's played by poor John Hurt. Like, I feel bad for him in this movie. Like, so bad. Like, I hope he got paid well. And he's like, go get Hellbox. And then Indy's like, your son's not a bad kid. You should let up on the school thing. And then Marion confesses that really he's Indy's son. He's Henry Jones the third. And instantly Indy's like, what? What? He has to go back to school. The and then Mutt saves them with the snake as the rope, which
Rope.
again, cute.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Okay.
I did like that. Like seeing him stand there with like the snake actually looks like the scene from Raiders
Yeah.
a little bit. So I was like, oh, that was a good job of not being too heavy-handed. But then Ox comes back with the Russians. He got help. We literally had all of that just so that they could get stuck on the quicksand and Marion could say that Mutt was his son.
Yeah, and you know what else is really funny too? He's like, grab this snake or whatever, and then he's like, it's not a Sears and Roebuck's or whatever he says it is, right? He's like, there's not like a
There's not
rope
Sears and
store.
Roebuck out here.
Yeah, there's no rope store around here. And then like 5 minutes later, we find out that's clearly not true, and there is a lot of vines around, right? I just realized that as you were talking, like there was actually quite a few ropes around.
There are
Um,
entirely other options than snakes here.
yeah, and yeah, just the randomness of him catching a big old rat snake.
Okay, also, I just want to throw out here Diner, I think you brought a knife to a gunfight. That was a good line.
Yeah,
When
not bad.
Mutt's like, oh, come on, try to take us. And he like takes out his little switchblade.
Yeah,
And Indy's like, no. I did like that part.
yeah, I did
But
like that
I
part
also
too.
clocked it was that point was our fifth exposition scene of people just sitting and talking.
Yeah, lots.
Can you tell that George Lucas had made the prequels before this?
Yeah, sounds annoying.
Also, we spend the most amount of time in the US in this movie out of any
Yeah, you
Indiana
have
Jones
to because
film.
they got to set it up for what's happening. It's yeah. Now that I'm thinking about that whole first fucking part of the movie, could have been just just destroyed. We could have just chopped that baby up real fucking fast. Could
I
have started
think
with
there's a
Harrison
good movie in
Ford.
this if you edit
What
it
if you
more.
started off? What if you started off with Harrison Ford in Roswell, so we know there's aliens, but we're not quite sure what's going on. And then oh, okay, how about this? He's at college with Ox.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Ox is telling him about the crystal skull. They're obsessed with it, and then Indy and Ox get pulled away on a fucking mystery thing to go to Roswell to see this alien thing, and they kind of get glimpses of it that it could be true, but we don't really know. End scene. Okay. Then it cuts to Mutt with Marion. Okay. Or Mutt trying to figure out what's going on with his mom. Da 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 da. Gotta go find Indy. Then he goes and gets Indy and brings him into the adventure. Wow. Scott Lucas, Scott Spielberg. We're out here writing movies. No, but for yeah, whatever.
No, I think you're right. Again, there's the plot of this movie isn't essentially bad. Like I think that people rail on the plot because that's like the easiest thing to hit.
Yeah.
But the reality is the story isn't, it's just the execution of all this. Like there's the, so I actually enjoyed the sequence in the graveyard. Like even though the whole like there being villagers there makes no sense, but again, it's very B movie-ish in a way that I can tolerate from an Indiana Jones movie, where of course there are these natives that are going to like have blow darts. It was entertaining, but guess what? Here's the fascinating thing: it's an Indiana Jones movie. The part I enjoyed most is actually the archaeology.
Yeah, I liked it too. That was a when he goes and finds the stuff in there. That's an interesting scene. I felt like engaged in that scene for sure. Um, the thing that took me out of it, I was, and I had texted you about it, but I was like, why is there villagers here and why is there villagers at the temple? They just don't provide any value to the plot at all, other than Mutt finds out that he's like, oh, are you sure you're a teacher? Which is actually kind of a funny line, but
Part time.
yeah, yeah, part time. That is true. That is funny, but it's not like he like I don't know. It
It
was just
doesn't
like
reveal. Well, the action scene doesn't reveal anything about character.
that we don't know already. We don't know.
Yeah. So in
Yeah,
like one of the best examples of using action to reveal character has I think is the opening scene of Casino Royale. We see Bond chase after the dude and we see him going through it's the parkour scene. We see Bond literally crash through walls. We see that this is a Bond who is a bulldozer, who literally uses a bulldozer at one point and has no compunctions about whatever collateral damage it takes to get what he wants. This sets our expectations for how Bond is going to be. It shows how he makes decisions. The scenes in this whole like fight sequence was an opportunity to see how does Mutt react to things? How does he make
yeah,
decisions in a fight? How does Indy show like his cleverness or something like that? There's
yeah,
a way that this could have been more meaningful than it was.
yeah. I wanted Indy to be smarter in this one.
Yeah.
I wanted him to be the old bull that like could still do some stuff once in a while, but like didn't muscle his way through stuff. Not that he muscled his way through stuff in the first one. Well, a little bit. He wings it, right? But I want him to wing it in a smarter way, in a more tactical way, like a way
Mhm.
that's more competent. I was going to use a word that I lost it, but commiserate with his
Mhm.
age.
Yes. We see that what has age has taken away, it has also given in experience.
Yeah, because he's done all
Because
these fucking missions and stuff now.
OSS,
He's a
like
triple agent or whatever.
I mean, that's they hint. They have the whole conversation. How do you know about this language?
Berlin. Oh
Well,
yeah.
no, he was
Oh
talking
yeah, yeah.
about Pancho Villa.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
from the Young Indiana Jones show, which like
Right.
I've seen, and
Yeah.
it's really fun because you get what I like about that show is it really does show. Okay, these are all the things Indy did that like help build this body of experience that he has.
Yeah.
Cool idea. The problem is we don't see like actual development from him. Like, what has he learned new since we saw him last?
Nothing.
And that isn't inherently something we want to see from a character like that. Do we want to feel like the so I was reading the trivia on this, and apparently Harrison Ford refused. He was okay with having age jokes. He actually said, "I want a couple of them," and he refused to dye his hair. He's like, "I know we have a thing in America where we're kind of afraid of getting old. I don't want people to perpetuate that. I want to look like I'm trying to not be my age, even though he was like 10 years older in the movie than in reality than in the movie. And he had, but the problem is with that, you have to show that you've actually grown.
Yes.
Because the most terrifying idea is you get that old and have learned nothing.
Yeah. You know what I just realized about You know how at the beginning of the trailer for the new one,
Hmm.
they show him and he's like alone or whatever because his like wife's dead or whatever. It kind of looks like that a little bit,
He just looks
right?
like a sad old man in the beginning of the movie, beginning of the
Yeah.
trailer.
And then there's time travel elements.
Hmm.
What do you think that the chances are that Spielberg didn't learn their lesson again and they bring back Marion again?
I don't think Karen Allen is the problem with the movie, though.
I didn't say that. I don't think any of these particular things have been a problem with the movie. I think the whole thing, the whole thing is the problem. Like none of it. I don't mind the monkey
The
swinging.
sum of its parts is the issue.
Yes,
Individual parts are not. Although I would argue there are definitely individual parts that are issues with this movie.
for sure.
Um, but in so here's
But
actually I'm kind of excited with Dial
but
of Destiny.
not necessarily like there is individual parts that are problems,
Mhm.
but not necessarily if you pitched like, hey, we should have this be part of the movie. Do you
Yes,
think this fits?
as
You
an
would say,
idea, they're
yes.
good.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea, right? We could make that work. They just didn't, or it just
Mhm.
didn't fit.
So I'm actually kind of excited about Dial of Destiny. The more I think about like what the, well, I mean the object, like the idea of what the Dial of Destiny is supposed to be, because it's very Jules Verne-ish,
Yeah.
and I'm intrigued by the idea of okay, so we've got our like spiritual artifacts at the beginning of the Indiana Jones thing. We've done our paranormal thing with Crystal Skull. A like kind of steampunky Jules Verne
Wild
thing.
Wild West.
Not like that movie, but like that kind of idea of something that's like this mechanical Nautilus type device
Yeah, no, I think it's cool.
intriguing.
I think it's neat. Good. Right?
Now execution, as we have learned, will be everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's.
I'm ready to talk about the jungle.
Well, okay, I just want to double check there were no other notes that I had specifically on that. Oh, I did note that I'm curious if I'd rather be reading this as a book or if it would be boring as a book too.
I mean it could have been I think it could have worked it as a movie. It just
True.
didn't in this particular thing.
Okay,
The
this is my
one
other question I have before because we've seen now the Crystal Skull.
yes.
They've gotten the Crystal Skull. What do you think of the Crystal Skull just as a prop, as a thing? Like, what do you think of it as an artifact?
Um
Like the imagery. Do you think the imagery works?
um I don't I would just say mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
I don't dislike it, not in love with it. It's not
Yeah.
something that I want. Um
So they sell the prop online, and I just sit there. I'm going, like, okay, Mjolnir, the Thor's hammer. I
yeah.
can see a whole bunch of dudes going, I want to buy that. Even
Yeah.
like the Staff of Ra thing, like they
Yeah.
have it at
I
Hallmark.
yeah.
Cool idea, but I don't think a giant blue
Crystal Skull.
plastic skull sitting on my desk would be that cool.
Uh, yeah, didn't in that case didn't do it for me. It's not something that I would like. It's not something that I wanted. They didn't make me fall in love with the. They didn't make me fall in love with anything in this movie. Is the
Mm-hmm.
problem, and it just left me with a lot of apathy. Right? Like I didn't care about the skull. I don't care about Ox. I don't care about Mutt. And I don't actually particularly care about fucking Marion. Indy's left her twice. Why the fuck should I care about her? I don't want his left.
Quote of the movie, quote of the episode.
But for real though, like I don't know.
No, I mean it's true because I so we let's talk about Marion's introduction. I like the fact Karen Allen is back because I do think that she's a charming actress, but the problem is they give her so little to do. Like
Yeah.
most of her thing is screaming.
Her thing's being Mutt's mom.
Yes. She shouts Indy multiple times. She
Yeah.
drives the truck
She
and
gets
then
really
she's
smitten with
there
him.
to like
She gets really smitten with him in the truck when she's like, "Oh, only me." Oh. I like that part. She has a big, nice smile on her face. It looks
yeah.
genuine.
Well, I thoroughly believe that Ford and Karen Allen
Yeah.
have chemistry as
Oh yeah.
actors, and
Have
they're
you ever
old
seen?
friends.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the Amelia the Daenerys off the Game of Thrones? She's on like some British show with Matt LeBlanc from Friends. And then she's like, he does like the how you doing? And she's like, oh, it does work, right? That's how I feel. Like if Harrison Ford said something to you about like, oh no, 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 you'd be like, oh okay, like there's no way you couldn't, right? Um, so but yeah, it's funny. No, I think she does a good job. Again, it's just what's her
They don't give
role?
her anything to do.
No, like and then like how why is she with Ox? Like,
Mhm.
um, whatever, just mediocre.
Eh, Okay, so let's talk about, we've teased this. Let's talk about the jungle. I just want to quickly say that I think the jungle chewing machine concept, great. Again, execution here. It has not aged well.
No, it's shit.
Most of the CGI in this movie has not
Oh, you're
aged.
talking about the CGI in particular?
Well, because most of this jungle sequence we get is CGI.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. The jungle chewing machine in particular, though, is like the thing that really bothered me about it is like it's just that's those guys are fucking ripping in that caravan. Convoy, I guess would be a better way to put it. But they're ripping through that fucking jungle. There's no way that machine makes a steady path through the jungle like that those guys are ripping on. Like it's just fucking silly is what it is. Like it's just like as soon as I seen that, at first I thought like, okay, that machine's cool, right? Like whatever, it's a fictional thing. I can get on board. It's not that's not how it would really work. But then those guys are just ripping through there right behind it. I'm just like, oh no, that wrecks it. Like
You
you're
know what it
taking it.
reminds me of?
You made a really good point though. Sorry, let me finish this. You made
Yeah.
a really good point though about that they there's multiple points in this movie where they just ask you to keep going once too far. And that's when that was one of the things for me where
So
I'm
it
just like,
reminds me of the thing in, do you ever watch Fern Gully?
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of too.
It reminds me of like the smog monster machine.
Totally. I know, but the machine is cool.
Mhm.
And but like them being able to drive 50 miles an hour on it
Yeah, no.
afterwards is silly.
Oh yeah. The okay, so let's talk about this whole sequence. We're in the jungle
Yeah.
and they have the big fight scene. Now, is it funny to have poor Shia LaBeouf try fighting with the sword and keep getting his crotch hit repeatedly by various jungle things? Kinda, but at the same token, it pushes credibility. I love the sword fight. And they actually just set up, he's like, I like fencing. I love sword fights. I put one in my book that will come out someday. And it's a great concept. But the everything around that is such shit. I can't enjoy the sword fight.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Camera work is awful.
Yeah.
The CGI background is awful. It's
Getting hit in
just
the balls once was funny. And
we
then
do it like 5 times.
yeah, it just keeps on happening. I'm just like, why just fucking jump over into pick a fucking lane. Right? Pick one.
On top of it, it is not it is slightly unrealistic. I don't remember what Irina's doing at that point, where like every time he has to like pause because he's got smacked in the balls, that she hasn't like put the sword through his chest.
Yeah, I don't remember either. I'm not
Again, just
rewatching it.
so terrible. Oh, then Mutt gets stuck on the vines. Scott, tell us about Mutt and his vines.
Okay, so these cars are ripping through these there's two cars and they're ripping along this dense dense jungle, but somehow they've found two simultaneous car paths that they're ripping along.
Because
I,
the jungle machine isn't doing its thing anymore.
correct. So I'm from Canada, so I don't know what it would be like for you, but they're going like at least 60 kilometers an hour, so like 30 or 40 miles an hour probably,
Yeah.
right? They're fucking ripping. And I don't mind the idea of Mutt getting stuck on these vines and having to swing across.
Mm-hmm. It's very
That,
pulp movie, B movie.
yep, that part did not bother me at all. The part that bothers me is that Mutt gets stuck on these vines, and these cars are ripping at 40 miles an hour down these two perfectly placed paths for these cars to be, okay, to the edge of the cliff. They're driving
Mhm.
along the edge of a cliff.
Which the edge of the
Mutt,
cliff bit looks horrible too.
yeah, it's not great.
The
Um,
CGI there is
and he's at zero. Mutt's at zero. 0 miles, 0 kilometers. He's at zero. He's chilling on these vines and he's looking up. And this is about how long it's taking. He sees all these monkeys, and then he sees all these vines, and then he sees all these monkeys swinging on the vines, and then he starts to swing. Now, this is the part that really bothers me upon watching it in review. Like I said, was not the monkeys on the vines, was not the vines itself, was
mhm.
not the swinging. If everything that I just described, let's say that while I was talking there about whatever, a car starts ripping down the road at 60 kilometers, 40 miles an hour, whatever it is. And by the time that I've just finished explaining all that, how far away would that car have been? And then this guy is going to start swinging on vines and catch up to these people. And he has no way, he's in the middle of a jungle. So he has no way, other than seeing where they just went, he has no way of knowing where they're going. Or, well, I guess he could just follow the two perfectly placed car paths with perfectly placed vines along the whole way. But um, he's got no way of knowing where they are going or where they went or what's the right way to go. Um, so yeah, I was kind of bothered by that a lot.
It's just a step too far. Again, the
But
idea is
yeah,
good.
I do
Swinging
like
on
when he's.
vines.
I like when he gets into. I like when he swings into the car and gets the thing and tosses it to Mutt or to Oxley. Like that's a fun part. Like that's a fun sequence. But I'm just like how like I don't know, man.
So here's what I see a lot of times in this movie so far. There are lots of like sequences where this was a good idea and then this was a good idea. Their bridge to get to the two good ideas was crap
Yeah,
because they're like it's exactly like the whole quicksand thing. Quicksand thing was a good idea, but to do it, you had to come up with because they still need to be with the Russians for this other scene to happen. So they have to have a way of them getting away from the Russians and then getting back with the Russians. So it feels like it's just kind of pointless.
yeah. There was just. I feel like this was just filled with member berries. That was just like, oh, remember when that guy went in the jungle and got caught in the quicksand? You know what I mean? Remember when Tarzan had to swing on the vines? Remember when? Remember when? Remember when the ants come in that other movie?
Okay, let's
Remember
talk about
when?
the ants
Okay.
because this is one of those things where I sit back and go, I don't. So in the old movies, there's always like the big bug scene, the big rat scene, the big tarantula scenes. Like they're actively like using animatronics or actual animals to make things more creepy and scary and like the things you'd find in archaeology. We have a horde of CGI ants. Now, I understand ants are hard to wrangle, so like I kind of accept that. But there's multiple times where they are using digital things that don't look real instead of having actual creepy crawlies. And I think having the actual creepy crawlies, me as a person watching Temple of Doom can say they're actually pouring bugs on top of Indiana Harrison Ford and actress whose name I can't remember plays Willie Scott. Like I know that's happening. I'm
Yeah,
more invested in this.
snakes actually come out of that snake.
Snakes are actually coming out of that snake in Raiders. Like these are things that are real. The ants are not.
Wasn't
And so
that sorry, wasn't that in Temple of Doom when he cuts open the snake on the dining table?
you're right. Okay, I thought you were talking about in the Well of Souls with the
Ah, I
snakes
see,
like
I see.
coming out of the
Yeah,
walls.
the skull. Yeah.
In this film though, the ants, everything it doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
And so like this I did like. I did like the big punch 'em up scene because it reminds me of I know you find it silly, but I love the scene where Indy's fighting Pat Roach, the big bald Nazi dude at the
Oh no,
plane.
I like that scene.
Oh, okay. It's fun. Like that is
Yeah,
part of
no,
what I
that's
think makes
great.
Indiana Jones great.
Yeah,
And they do that again with like them being surrounded by ants. Ox, for whatever reason, the skull like keeps the ants away. I
yeah,
am okay with that. But then they have the bit where like Irina's holding from a tree branch and the ants like create, they literally like you see the ants form a web like up
to
to
get
try
to her.
reaching her, and then she squishes one of them with her legs, and I thought of Xenia Onatopp from Goldeneye. But it's still not like that has no consequences. It's just like one scene that why didn't the ants keep trying? They're infinite ants.
Yeah, I know what you mean. This should be like zombies. Um, yeah, this was just a nostalgia memberberry from that movie that you watched on the lead up.
Which I But the thing is that it's much better, so much better. Like
I
the
know, but
ants.
they just took the ideas from all these things. It's
Mhm,
like, okay, we have a soda shop that we need to have these greasers and
mhm,
socks fighting in, or whatever. You know what I mean? These greasers and the preppy guys need to fight in it because that's like
mhm.
a trope. We need to have ants. We need to have quicksand. We need to have monkey swinging on vines. We need to have uh, a badass greaser with a motorbike. Right? What do you want to do? I want to be a motorbike repairman. Okay, well, fucking cool, bro. You should read Zen in the Art of Motorbike Repair or something.
The but the thing is, those are inherently they could work because that's what all the other movies were. Were we have these ideas from other movies and we're just tweaking them. Problem is they didn't tweak them enough in this movie to make it unique.
Correct. Well, they didn't. There was no coherent. There was not a coherent thread through it all. They just took.
No.
That's what I mean when I said at the beginning about that. They just took a bunch of nostalgic ideas, but I felt like they're like, you know what we did on the first time? We took all these nostalgic ideas and combined it into something awesome. And I felt like they did that. They tried to do that same recipe, but this
Mhm,
time they forgot that they just took all the ingredients and they kind of forgot what they were making.
mhm.
You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
first time, it felt like they knew what they were making a lot more along the lines of like, okay, we're gonna do this archaeologist adventure movie or whatever, and then yeah, not great. The ants I didn't mind so much. The pyramid thing weird, but
Mhm.
the actual ant part, it was fine.
Yeah.
But again, I don't like. It's just at the end of this monkey swinging sequence that doesn't sword fighting monkey swinging ants, and there's nothing that happens in that other than that they end up in the boat with the skull.
And so boats. The whole it goes down three times.
Yeah,
I I've never been like down a giant waterfall,
yeah. Oh, really?
but
Wow.
I know, shocking. Here's my question. They have no idea how bad each drop is going to be. But because we can see it as the audience, somehow like the characters also can see that it's really bad. That confused me because they like
My
have the reaction of, oh no, this is awful.
yeah,
Well, you
yeah.
don't know. It could be just like a little drop. The other part is the water, like this sequence of like going down the waterfalls. We have the raft scene in Temple of Doom, which is really great and really cool and visceral. And we know they can survive it because it's bad, but it's not bad enough to kill them. There's danger, but they can survive. There is no way people survive that.
Bro, you just seen it. I know what you mean.
It just
There
it
was
pushes my level of unbelief too high. And
yeah,
when Indy like he's like, there's going to be a third time. And he like pulls his hat down and clutches it to his chest.
yeah.
Karen Allen is holding on to the stupid steering wheel when they're on the beach. How did you get on shore if you were clutching the steering wheel, giggling
Perfectly
like a
sit,
maniac?
perfectly sitting there.
Yes, because
Um,
you don't get on shore by doing that.
you know what? You know what made me? This is what suspended my disbelief. They go down the first waterfall, then they go down the second waterfall, and as they're getting up to the third waterfall, if you look on the boat and everything, um, there's like these little lights that are on the front of the boat, and they're still working and running. after they've already gone down 2 waterfalls, and that boat has hit everything twice. I was just like, no, those should be fucking broken. The glass should be broken. Those things should be bent. Like those should be gone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what did it for me. I was already checked out at that point. So I'm like, third waterfall. I'm like, fuck it. Cool. We're here. Parents made me watch this stupid fucking movie. trying to get clicks for his fucking podcast.
Scott, we don't question the algorithm. We just bow to its
Yeah,
wishes.
just sacrifice my time.
Okay, so they get to the whole aliens thing. They get to the whatever tribal wasteland, I mean temple, and there are the natives,
That
which
come out of these skull things in the caves.
yeah.
So first of
Oh,
all, the thing that bothers me about this is that like there's these ancient caves, whatever,
mhm.
cool. There's these things. They have like some sort of covers over the thing, and so they come out of them. So it's like, do they rebuild those covers every time that someone comes through there, which is not very often, or like do they have those been there for like thousands of years? And they're like, this is my fucking moment, like smash this, you know what I mean?
Been
Like,
waiting.
which one? It like it doesn't make it just is. There's no reason for those guys to be there.
No. And there's no resources. Like, how are they surviving?
I know that's what I was wondering. Also, they're just waiting for some archaeologists to come passing through.
So here's the other part. So like when we watch Secret of the Incas on the podcast, we have like native people that are actively helping to rob their national treasures because
Right.
realistically, like
They have no concept of it.
most of the history like of illicit archaeological goods comes from native people that live in a spot finding it and realizing I can sell this for bread.
Yeah, they have no concept of it. It has no bread is more important for their life
Yeah. Well, my
than
point is
some fucking old shit.
in whereas in like all these this movie in particular, they expect us to believe that these people know where this stuff is and are not just taking it themselves. Like in the whole like graveyard thing, are you telling me that they had no idea that there's a giant cache of gold that they are there
Oh,
to protect
I see what you're saying.
and they didn't just rob it themselves?
Yeah, no one ever went in there and opened up those things except for Ox.
Yeah. It just it pushes my also I made the note when I first saw the natives in the valley thing, I thought they looked like mini versions of the rock and called them the pebbles.
No.
So they have to like so they use the skull to like keep the natives at bay, which again, I have 100% certainty that the natives would kill them and take the skull if they see this as a valuable relic.
I think they see it as something to be feared, great power. But if they're so scared of this great power, then why are they camped right beside the fucking
Yeah.
tower obelisk?
Yeah. Which then I was trying to decide, would I still think that the obelisk thing when it like folds and bends would be as stupid if it was practical? I don't know.
Oh, I didn't think that was that stupid. I thought that worked.
Okay.
Yeah.
It didn't it I was confused as to the like I understand the whole idea of like solving puzzles to get through spots and like, oh, you press the thing. Like that's part of archaeology stuff 101 for movies. I did not understand why it worked that way.
Oh, because there's you have an empty box.
No, I meant no, I understand like the mechanics of it. I'm just trying to figure out like why would they design it that way? Like it's there's like the reason someone had to have built it. Why did they build it that way?
Oh, didn't they build it so that the Oh, I see.
Are they trying to keep like people out of the whole thing? How the skull actually leave?
Yeah, like now that you said that, I was gonna say that the reason is so that the skull can be returned by like the rightful person, right? But then why did the skull leave? His name's not Cortez. But did Cortez take it?
Yeah, and then how did they put it all
Cortez.
back together?
Jesus, this is hurting my brain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I understand
So
conquistadors take the skull, but like, did they intricately built put the sand pillar there? Because the sand is a one-time thing. Like this isn't a refresh. Like you can say, well, the water slushes in. You always have that thing like continually fed for irrigation that will be useful. I'm just
yeah, that's really funny. Um,
this is the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, folks. This is the way that this movie works, is that it gives you enough time to think about these things. And the more you pick apart, it just the more it's like a shitty brick is shit that they have tried to put gold leaf on it. If you just start very thinly, and if you just scratch the surface of it, you realize what you've got.
sad.
So then they get to the whole like throne room, not bad. Like concept art. Again, I see where this works.
Oh yeah, I
My
like the throne room. It was neat.
issue is everything that happens in it.
Just the story.
It how does Irina know they were a hive mind? Also, we didn't talk about the fact they passed the walls of exposition,
Oh no, they were a hive mind because um they took stuff from all the cultures basically. Like
which,
they were spreading seeds of knowledge across the whole world.
well, no, but hive mind means that they're all like thinking as one.
Oh,
And
I
how
see.
does Irina know that when she walks into their throne room? There's nothing that says they're a hive mind anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I think because they're waiting for that last one, but there applies that they let that thing go
Yes.
because they would have already been all complete there before when the that guy stole it.
So that's the other part. So
So
we're
did he
supposed
go?
to
Wait,
believe
Did he go there and steal it, or was that just never returned there?
that's the question. Like I don't know. Like I think that
I don't want to go back and rewatch
no,
what they said about it.
the conquistador is like supposed to have taken it, but how could he have taken it if they're like all powerful there? As I would also like to reiterate, they're dead. These are skeletons. And I'm sorry, whatever like paranormal stuff is, biology in theory is dead or alive.
Oh
Crystalline is
no, they got
still.
around that. They got around that because they're not space aliens; they're interdimensional beings. So they're
So
not
they're
made
like in
from.
stasis with just their
Yeah.
skeletons.
Well, so you know how Mario? That's not a right way. Pac-Man is a
Okay.
better version.
Okay.
Pac-Man is like a two-dimensional reality,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, it doesn't work in three dimensions. There's a third dimension to height or to
Mm-hmm.
volume, I guess, that Pac-Man could never realize because it would just be on a flat plane
Mm-hmm.
forever. So the rules for three-dimensional beings don't exist for two-dimensional beings. And then as we're getting in, apparently there's like 10 dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we're getting into these layering on layers of other dimensions, there's certain things that we can't comprehend about how that would work. So I don't actually find that particular thing to be
Mm-hmm.
so crazy, but I do see what you're saying. But
It's just
yeah,
the rules aren't clear for how this is supposed to work.
yeah,
Whereas like all the other artifacts,
yes,
it's this is how this works. The
yes,
box contains the spirit of God and can was taken and kills people.
specifically Nazis.
Specifically Nazis. The stones bring the ability to like have power with the gods or something like that. Like even that one's super vague. Like together they're going to be able to take over the world by using them. The Holy Grail, I drink it, I live forever. There is a whole bunch of exposition about how this skull is going to like give them the power of being able to harness the minds of other people, and it is extremely vague psychic stuff that we don't actually have any proof of for most of the story, other than the if you stare into its eyes, you go crazy. Also, the line, they were collectors, they were archaeologists.
Yeah.
That is being said by an archaeologist who I am fairly convinced at this point of the movie has no idea what archaeology is.
Yeah, I also thought that. I was like, that's not archaeology.
That's museum curation.
Yeah, and
Being British.
yeah, I was very I
Because
didn't like that line.
collecting things from a culture, it means nothing if it's current. That's called hoarders. Ancient Alien Hoarders is probably a show that is not on TLC or the Nash or like the History
I think
Channel,
I think
but
stores lockers, ancient aliens.
yes, like I can see a version of that where it's like that's what this is. They were pack rats.
Yeah.
That's all. So Irina, they return the skull. And again, the visual imagery is actually really good here. It goes up there, it like snaps in place, which again, there are mobile moments where it's like magnetic, but not magnetic. It's like magnetic when, which to all metal, not things that are actually magnetic, which they point out at some
Yeah.
point, which again never is explained, never makes sense, but it only happens when the plot needs it to,
That's convenient.
isn't it? So they return the skull. All of a sudden, it's like it asks if you want what it can give you in return,
Yeah.
which is kind of stupid. And then she says she wants all knowledge. And Indy's like, I've got a bad feeling about this, which is the Star Wars line, not the Indiana Jones line. And I kind of take that personally.
Yeah. And then they just run away. They're like, oh, gotta go.
Okay, Mac dying means shit.
Yeah, and he's like just like the part where he's just like hoarding gold for 5 minutes and he doesn't even have a good pile or whatever. Like he could have filled his arms with shit to take already.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, it's just silly. And I don't care about him. He's already fucking betrayed them twice,
yeah.
at least. I don't get why Indy's trying to save him at that point. Like it's just the whole thing is just not great.
It falls so flat.
Yeah.
And then they get so the whole treasure thing, it becomes a flying saucer and goes up and just vanishes, and the valley fills with water. Stupid. And but then like they're all sitting there on top of the rocks, and Mutt's like, well, I'm gonna go back. I don't care about what the rest of you are doing. You idiot. He thinks he can survive on the jungle on his own. Good luck. But then they have the dialogue, why don't you stick around, Junior? And I don't know why. I don't know. Why didn't you, Dad? This dialogue is in 100, and he makes a comment about, oh, your grandfather's somewhere smiling. That dialogue is entirely unearned. It feels so lazy. There is no like catharsis arc to them not being family to being family because he hasn't been involved in his life at all. And like the whole, oh, we're back together now that just suddenly happens between Marion and Indy. It just it pained me because it wasn't good. Oh,
Yeah.
and the line, where'd they go? Space? Not to space, but the space between spaces.
Interdimensional beings, bro. That's what I was talking about. Me and Oxley, we know what's up. The also watching that valley fill with water would be one of the most amazing things to witness.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, it'd be so cool, dude. That thing filling up and like you could see like the ocean because it's big enough that like there'd be like shit, everything would be getting swallowed up. Like it'd be neat. Like there's no way. I watched like a CSI one time, and the killer was like I don't know, it was something with a Zamboni, and the guy's like, there's three things everyone watches, like a waterfall, a fire, and a Zamboni. Like, you know what I mean, driving around. But like, there's no way you couldn't be mesmerized by there's no
Wait,
way you
you
could be
missed the
mesmerized
Zamboni?
by that. What?
You missed the Zamboni and the Crystal Skull. It was one of the vehicles in the convoy.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. But no, but what I'm saying is there's no way that you couldn't be mesmerized by that
Mhm.
when he's just
And
like,
they had their
okay,
backs to it.
fuck it, we're gonna go. And it's like, okay, you're gonna go hike. How long do you think it's gonna take him to walk out of there? Jesus. With no supplies. They literally have zero supplies.
Do they don't even have a compass on them that we know
They got
of.
nothing. They have nothing. They gotta go up three waterfalls with an old man, two old men, and an old lady.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, women attract in the jungle too? Bears. That's just facts. They're just that is just like they got no water. They got nothing. It's just very interesting.
If we didn't see Oxley at the end at the wedding, I would assume he's the one that they ate to
Yeah.
survive.
He looks like a completely different person also. I'm like, who the fuck is this? Oh, it's the
Yeah.
same dude. Okay. Interesting.
Okay, also, Indy was at the beginning of the movie after the whole okay, so there's this whole like non-used element of America is afraid of communists at the beginning of the movie that's like really hammered on and then vanishes the moment we get out of the US, which I also think is like a complete waste of our time
Yeah.
because it doesn't pay off at all into
It doesn't,
anything.
it doesn't make the bad guys bad.
No, it doesn't like if okay, if Mac was American, that would be more interesting because it's the concept of there are people that are we worrying about people that might be betraying us within our midst? But he isn't. He's British. So like
Yeah.
that doesn't even attach to the other thing. Then but he is sent away on leave with pay and somehow like his boss the dean gets fired over it.
No, he resigned.
But it why how does him resigning help
I
is the
don't
thing that I was
know.
struggling with. It sounds badass to say, but it I don't understand how him agreeing to resign, unless someone wanted him to resign already, helps Indy not get paid for his leave of absence.
I also don't understand.
But then Indy's back as associate dean. We have seen nothing that actually gave us him getting his name cleared to be able to go back.
Yeah, because Mac would just be disappeared,
Yeah,
like literally to the space between spaces. So
there's so much. The hat gag at the end wasn't horrible, but it
I
wasn't
liked
good.
it. I liked that a lot. I like that a lot. I I could have I wish this was better and Shia LaBeouf was just Indiana Jones.
So this is my again my question. I can Harrison Ford has the charisma to carry a movie. Shia, like he was in the Transformers movies, and I
No,
was
he was
also like putting in my head,
yeah,
okay, this is the time after Transformers, so like he
yeah,
is a
hot.
headliner,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have the same like again.
It
I
doesn't
think
have
that
to be though. It can be how it can like I think so I think the problem
you need a compelling
with
lead.
yes, the problem with what you're thinking though is that you're like thinking who's going to replace Sean Connery as Bond
Mm-hmm.
because you're thinking that this person needs to be the new Sean Connery, but then all of a sudden you get a Daniel Craig who does it like completely different but also good. You're like, oh, okay, it's
Mm-hmm.
different Bond, right? It could have been different indie, and we could have had multiple
True.
different indies, but now this shit is just dying. And then this new movie's coming out, and it's gonna suck. And then yeah, and I'm sad. I've wasted my life watching Indiana Jones. That's like sounds like so sad to say, but like, how did this happen? It was like a staple of my childhood to like fucking trash, bro.
I so I made the note. My last note was this movie is finally in all caps over.
Yeah, I was also happy it was over.
The Here's the thing though, it actually fills me with more hope for Dial of Destiny because I mean this nicest way possible.
If you
I
suck anymore, watch what you say. You're gonna curse it.
it is
Uh,
The the reviews so far are simply that it is not great, but it's unnecessary. I can buy that as long as it is entertaining. This film wasn't entertaining enough. It was a lot of noise on the screen of good ideas that went nowhere. I
yeah.
mean, another thing, like we talked about this when we were texting back and forth about it, I feel like this film wanders and it doesn't know what it's trying to. It like doesn't have a clear A, B, C that's trying to reach.
No,
It
it
always feels like it's trying to wander from good idea to good idea with a whole bunch of shit in between.
nostalgia to nostalgia to nostalgia to nostalgia to nostalgia to nostalgia to remember when 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 to nostalgia. And there's nothing. Like the whole point with the nuke at the beginning and stuff, like that could have been tied in so much nicer that we're
Mm-hmm.
harnessing power, that the Russians also have this incredible power and we're both sitting on it and we're
Mm-hmm.
both fucking evil, and that these Russians are actually an evil reflection of us, and that
Mm-hmm.
neither of us deserve this fucking great knowledge from these alien interdimensional spacemen, space between spaces, that are making uranium, enriching plutonium. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
The
None of it was there though.
theme, the theme, that's the thing. Like there's a couple of moments where they try to have theme, where they try to have on the nose dialogue about this is what it is. It doesn't come through in the actual narrative of the story.
Yeah, I was trash. What would you rate it out of 10?
I would rate it at 3.
Yeah, I think I'm about there too. I was thinking two.
Because again, I think that so this was the other thing I walked away from this movie with. I can see why some people like it. If you are not trying to actually pay attention to the story, and you are someone who is perhaps George Lucas and Steven Spielberg's age, and you're like, I remember all of these things. I remember being a greaser when I had a full head of hair. If that's your thing, like I can see why you would like this movie.
Yeah.
But if you're actually watching it for like a compelling story, it just isn't there.
Yeah, no, I'm over it. I don't need to watch it ever again.
So like
Uh
even with the worst Bond film, I would rewatch and enjoy the good moments because as cheesy and ridiculous as it is, it delivers on all the tropes that is Bond with a charismatic actor.
what do you think they're gonna do in Dial of Destiny with Shia LaBeouf?
I
Nothing.
oh
You think
he's
nothing?
he's completely out of it. Like I
Did they
think
say anything about his son and Marion? Because if
I
Marion's still a part of the story, right? Because he's probably gonna
yeah.
be single indie now again.
Yeah, so my assumption is that the premise is she dies and Mutt's gone is what they're going to say. Or if they even acknowledge it at all.
My son is dead. That's what they'll say. They won't. They'll explicitly say it. They'll be like, oh, my wife died, my son died, my Chewbacca died, right? My
In
son.
this film, like again, I think that they had an interesting like setup of the idea life has stopped because he's talking with his buddy and he's like, life has stopped, has reached the point where it's no longer giving and it's starting to take.
All my friends are dying.
There's a theme they could have worked with that to then the next stage of adventure is investing in others. But again, they keep teasing things that they never actually pay off or develop.
Yeah.
So you would never watch this movie again. What context? Here's a good question. What what would be like the context you would ever watch this again?
Someone asked me on a podcast to do a episode on the Crystal Skull, and I need to watch it again. No, that would pretty much be it. I wouldn't watch it. I don't think I would even watch it as like a, I
If you
don't
were doing a
know.
marathon, you'd stop at 3.
Yeah, like I said, I think I said in the last episode, but you asked me originally, you're like, would you want to do an episode on one of the Indiana Jones movies? And I thought in my head, oh, which of the three movies do I want to do the episode on? That's what I thought, not intentionally. I'm not even like a snobbish like that where I'm like, oh, this one doesn't fucking, I only count Raiders and Crusaders as Indiana Jones. Like I don't like that's not me. Like I'm just like no, it
Mhm.
counts as part of it.
Mhm.
Whatever. Just didn't think of that in my head. Didn't even count. Didn't even consider it as one. There's a time like I don't know. I don't think I would watch it again. I think I would. I don't think I would ever sit there. Like I sat on my couch and watched part of this movie. I don't think I would do that ever again. I
Mhm.
think I would have it on. Um, I don't know. I don't. I got better shit to do with my
So
time.
here's one other question I'll ask.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the score is doesn't help as much in this movie?
Um. Yeah.
Because
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
watching this,
There's no. There's no. The thing is that the score can be whatever the score is, but there's no fucking points. There's no
Mhm.
like there's no rhythm to the story where I'm like, oh shit, he's in trouble. How's he gonna get out of this one? Tune in next
Mhm.
week. You know what I mean? There's never
Yeah.
any points like that where I do it. I did like in the beginning when he's in the warehouse and this and the theme music comes on when he starts being indie. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, I like that a lot. But honestly, other than that, at the beginning, didn't think about the music at all.
Mhm.
Zero. Didn't. It didn't
Yeah.
even cross my mind.
When
So
I
I
was I hated all the 50s music they threw in, and I like 50s music, but
yeah
it they didn't use 30s music in the 30s. We didn't suddenly have like jazz playing.
yes
I- It feels it just again felt more like this is the creator's nostalgia throwing in
yes
here.
yeah
But then also I felt like the score, like John Williams is amazing. And even all the Star Wars movies, even the sequel ones, the scores elevate everything.
yes
This film, I just didn't notice the soundtrack. And when I did, I was like, this just sounds like the same thing that they've done every other movie, just not as good.
Yeah. No, the only songs I remember from the beginning, "You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog" and the indie theme coming on when they were in the warehouse, and then I honestly couldn't tell you a single one that was on the rest of the time.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's kind of how I feel
So,
about the movie.
Scott, what is your final prediction slash will you watch Dial of Destiny when it
Um,
comes out?
yeah, I'll watch it when there's some convenient way for me to watch it. I will
Mhm.
not be going to the theater to watch it. I don't have. If you told me it was good, I'll go. Nah,
You
I don't
won't
know.
believe
Actually,
me if I say it's good. I have burned all my social capital with Scott getting him
um,
to watch
I
Universal Skull.
would I? No, I'm just thinking like I would like to go see Oppenheimer in the theater because
Mhm.
they did it on huge IMAX. So I'd like to go see it on big IMAX.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's got to be a reason for me to go see a movie in the theater. Like I just would rather sit here and watch it at my house or whatever.
Mhm.
Convenient. Um, do I think I'll watch it? I think I'll watch it because I got to see. I basically have to see at this point what it is. But it's definitely. I'm not. I don't have high hopes for it. I think that I watched some I watched some channels with stuff that's going on behind the scene at Disney, basically.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
there's a lot of drama with Kathleen Kennedy
yeah.
and Bob Iger and like all this stuff. And it seems, and I'm getting a very skewed perspective on things,
Yeah.
but it seems to me there's a lot of drama that's happening on the back end of things that is not going to allow this just to be the best Indiana Jones it could be. And it sounds like there was a lot of reshoots and a lot of rewrites, like a lot. And I think that cannot be good. So
I
that's where I'm at. I want it to be awesome. I would love it. I would love nothing more than to be completely wrong
mhm.
and eat shit and come on here and be like, yeah, it's great. It's John Wick 4, right? It's
Mhm.
Puss in Boots 2. um, as good as all these things, right? But don't have high hopes. What about you?
I'm I'm hopeful. Like again, I think that my expectations are just lowering to such an extent that if it is better than this movie, like if it has a coherent narrative,
Okay, let's do that. Do you think that it will be better than this movie?
I 100% think it'll be better than this movie.
Ooh, why?
Here's my
Why?
reasoning.
Okay.
James Mangold's directing,
Okay.
and he and the people that wrote the movie, it's him and then his writing team from Ford v Ferrari. So while I definitely think studio problems are going to be present, I think the CGI in a couple places is going to be horrendous. I think watching Harrison Ford might be painful from time to time. I 100% believe that there's going to be a better narrative that's more consistently we're going from A to B. I think that I gave Crystal Skull a 3. This film might be a 5. And if it's a 5, I will be content because you know what? I think that they have done the best that they can at this point.
I think I hope that you are right. I think that based on the number of things that I've heard about the number of reshoots that they've had to do, I don't think they have a good story. I
Okay.
think that's a big, I think that's a big fucking problem. I think that they I think that originally they were gonna make Fleabag.
Mm-hmm.
Um the ending was gonna have like some alternate thing where Fleabag takes up the indie hat, like Shia LaBeouf was supposed to, and then it was gonna be a strong, powerful women as Indiana Jones, which
You mean the
I'm okay with that.
current iteration of Disney would do something like that? My
Yeah,
shock and surprise.
I'm okay with it though. I'm not like a I'm not I think that there could be a
So like
like Laura
Laura
Croft. Yeah,
Croft
yeah,
vibes.
exactly, right? Or there could be some woman who is a really good Bond.
Mhm.
Could happen. I'm not against it in particular. You know what I mean?
I
I just
am,
don't.
but that's an entirely different
Yeah, yeah.
conversation.
She could be a womanizing woman, big butch lesbian, killing everybody. Um, they could. No, what I'm saying though is that I think that they're possibly trying to force. I don't want to say their agenda,
Mhm.
but maybe like, yeah, I don't know. I just am not. I think that based on the number of reshoots, though, that they've done, that they don't have a fucking story, or that there's going
Mhm.
to be stuff that is very like, imagine going in to rewrite stuff that's already been shot.
Mhm.
How difficult that would be
Well,
to rewrite an ending, to try to edit it all together, to try to piece it together. You could do it if the right
mhm.
pieces are there, but you still need the right pieces. And if you don't have those pieces, sometimes there's no way that you can pull that story together.
I agree. My hope is that so reshoots are fairly normal at this point for most Hollywood movies. For most of like just because the way that it's like we have to have everything that works work. So if it tests poorly in any way, shape, or form, we're going to have new work on it. Also, my hope is I've heard the same rumor, and from what I understand, that was received very poorly with test audiences. So they have decided to adjust that so that it isn't that particular narrative. But we'll see. I'm again, if it's a 5, I will be happy.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be like a 3 or 2. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just being pessimistic so that I can be like, okay, it was actually not that horrible. I would
Mhm.
like that to be the case, like I said. I would love it to be awesome. Don't think it's gonna be awesome. I think it'll be
Mhm.
mediocre. And
But mediocre will be fine because mediocre is still better than garbage in my mind.
yeah, well, it might be might be bordering on garbage. We'll see. Thanks for having me on. I'm mad.
Scott,
I'm a little
thank
upset that
you.
you made me watch this. No, I'm just kidding. It was okay. It was okay. It wasn't. It was just like I was just like, bro, this is just like.
Thank you for taking one on the chin for
Oh.
the team. You are a brave man, Scott Hebert. And in return, I am going to ask you to plug whatever you've got going on. Where can people learn more about Scott Hebert and your art?
YouTube, Scott Hebert Art. I'm gonna start a live stream show eventually that hasn't got started yet. No, I'm making paintings. I'm just that's what I do. I make paintings. Check out my website, scotthebert.art, and that's it.
And I will definitely plug your website has recently gotten a facelift and it looks amazing. So we will link it in the show notes. I will encourage you guys to check it out. You can't see them in the frame if you're watching on YouTube, but I have several of Scott's paintings and they look fantastic.
Thanks. I got some. There's like 3 you can see. They're
Yeah,
all-
you've done a better job actually having it in your frame. Okay, also, just before I forget, when I first saw the jungle chewing machine, I'm like, is this what it's like for Scott to clean his house?
Oh yeah, that's funny. I got that. Everything's getting chewed up. I like that jungle chewing machine. Didn't like the I didn't like how there was a convoy.
Yeah.
Not my favorite. Okay.
Scott, thank you again for joining the show. Until next time.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.